I was reborn with Jessica. In her eyes, I was probably still the foolish boy who gave her everything and had no principles in my previous life. For her, I provided the best living conditions, sent her to a top university, and even supported her without hesitation when she started her own business, even though it bankrupted my family. But what about her? When I had nothing left, she kicked me away without mercy and even stood in front of me with my mortal enemy, Ryan, to show off. She said that she finally didn't have to endure my so-called money humiliation anymore. Whenever I thought of this, I was extremely angry, and the hatred in my heart burned like a raging fire. Therefore, after my rebirth, I vowed never to give her any chances again and never to let her humiliate me wantonly. This time, the Smith Group's charity donation event came as scheduled, and I attended as a representative. Every year, we will select one of the many recipients for one-on-one funding and arrange special personnel to connect. In my previous life, it was here that I fell in love with Jessica at first sight and thought she was an angel. But who would have thought that she was just an ungrateful person without conscience? Before I went this time, I specifically informed Ryan. Ryan is my mortal enemy and also the love interest of Jessica. In her previous life, Jessica complained to me countless times, saying that Ryan had a crush on her before I funded her, and it was my money that blocked their love. So this time, I want to see if Ryan will really fall in love with Jessica before she has any feelings for me. When Ryan and I entered the funding hall, I couldn't help but sigh at the scene in front of me. The hall was crowded with people, hundreds of people standing in the entire space. I swept my eyes among the dense crowd and found her, Jessica. I have to say that she is indeed eye-catching in terms of appearance and figure alone. She is nearly 1.7 meters tall, with a slender waist, long legs, and a head of bright black hair that falls on her shoulders like a waterfall. Among a group of students dressed simply and with an air of poverty, she is like a snow lotus blooming alone in the ice and snow, which is particularly eye-catching. Jessica noticed my gaze and immediately straightened her back and raised her chin even higher. I knew in my heart that she was reborn just like me. For a female entrepreneur who was once so successful, it must be difficult for her to adapt to the time when she was a poor student. Facing me, the person she hated the most in her previous life, who was about to take action against her, I wanted to see how she would react. I strode in with a playful mood. The people from the school were so enthusiastic about me and kept thanking Smith Group for creating opportunities for poor students to study peacefully. You see, even the others know how to be grateful. But Jessica, just because I like her, she regards all my efforts as humiliation. But it doesn't matter. This time, I decided to withdraw my love and see what she can do. I said a few humble words on the surface, saying that this is the social responsibility of the company. Then we moved on to the next step. The school selected 10 candidates based on various indicators, such as grades and awards, and I had to pick one of them as a one-to-one funding target. I sat at the conference table, and the person in charge asked the candidates to line up and come to me one by one to introduce themselves. These children are all very outstanding, but they are limited here because of their poor family conditions. The purpose of our funding is to help them overcome the obstacles in front of them. The eyes of the children who were introduced to me were full of gratitude and enthusiasm. After all, everyone understands that becoming a one-to-one funding target means getting more resources and having the opportunity to move towards a broader world. Soon it was Jessica's turn. She was indeed excellent, with grades consistently ranked in the top 10, and she had won many provincial and national awards. The person in charge was very optimistic about her and asked her to talk to him a few more words to make a deeper impression on me. But Jessica didn't appreciate it and said, "Hello," with a cold face. The person in charge's face suddenly darkened, but Jessica looked nonchalant, looking at me with arrogance and disdain. In my previous life, after listening to Jessica's introduction, I skipped the next candidate and designated her as the one-to-one sponsor. She must have thought it would be the same this time. What a pity. I turned to look at the person in charge and said expressionlessly, "Let's get to know the next student." Jessica was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect me to make such a decision, and she didn't leave in time. The person in charge immediately urged, "Student Liu, please don't waste time." Jessica didn't insist anymore, glared at me fiercely, and then turned and left. I looked at her back, without any fluctuations in my heart. If I hadn't chosen her, she wouldn't even be qualified to stand in front of me. She's not worth my second glance. The next candidates came on stage one by one, and I listened to their introductions one by one. Everyone had their own shining points, but one person caught my attention: Olivia. She has never won any awards, but her grades are always among the best. She has a scar on her face. It is said that her father is an alcoholic and has abused her many times, leaving this scar. But there is no cowardice in her eyes, but instead she is full of determination and courage. Among a group of excellent candidates, I finally chose her. "I choose Olivia," I announced briefly and directly. Olivia looked at me timidly, her bright big eyes full of gratitude and surprise. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft and gentle, like a stream of fresh water, warming my heart. Jessica stood aside, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and sneered coldly, "Study hard, nerd." Olivia didn't respond, and pursed her lips tightly. Obviously, she didn't want to argue with Jessica, and I didn't intend to give her any chance. Suddenly, I looked at Jessica coldly. "Candidate, are you verbally bullying your classmates?" Jessica looked at me in surprise at first, probably because she didn't expect me to say that. Then, she had a funny expression on her face that said, "I see. You did this on purpose to get my attention." The arrogance and provocation in her tone almost made me want to turn around and leave. However, I knew that she didn't realize the mistake she made. I sneered in my heart and couldn't help thinking, this woman is really self-righteous. "You don't think you've done anything wrong, right?" I spoke again, my tone cold. Jessica still maintained a tough attitude. "I'm just telling the truth." Her eyes were full of disdain and provocation. I didn't have time to argue with her, so I turned to the school staff and said, "Is this the candidate you selected? I doubt the character of the person receiving this grant." Jessica so bluntly, "I want to support those who can pass on this kindness, not those classmates who are arrogant and ridiculed." I paused for a moment, then added coldly, "I doubt whether she would lend a hand to those who are weaker than her if she had more resources." As soon as the words fell, the atmosphere froze instantly, and everyone's eyes were focused on Jessica. Her face gradually became ugly, and it was obvious that she didn't expect me to be so decisive. If she can't even show the most basic respect and solidarity among her classmates, then she doesn't deserve to be my sponsor. I finally emphasized my tone with a sharp look. The person in charge stood up nervously, trying to defuse the embarrassment. "Student Liu, apologize to Olivia immediately. Otherwise, we will cancel your funding qualification." Jessica's face turned angry. Her eyes were full of fire. She was stunned for a moment, then glared at me fiercely. "I won't apologize." Her voice was full of stubbornness. I didn't respond to her, but said calmly, "If you insist on not apologizing, then our Smith group will never support students like you who don't know how to be grateful and unite." Jessica didn't bow her head, but looked at me stubbornly. "Don't think that you can make me surrender with money. Jessica, will succeed with my own ability one day." When she said this, her attitude was still arrogant, but I knew that she had lost her chance. Her self-esteem prevented her from bowing to me, and I was no longer in the mood to forgive her. After a moment of silence, there was sudden applause. Ryan appeared in front of us, clapping and walking up to me. "You can't bully such a strong-willed classmate, William." Ryan acted righteously, stood up for Jessica, and tried to accuse me of bullying poor students. There was a gloating smile in his eyes, and when Jessica saw him, her eyes suddenly lit up. She seemed to think she had received help, and in her mind, she was playing a rich man helping poor students drama. I know what Ryan is thinking. He just wants to use Jessica to disgust me and suppress my previous good intentions. I smiled coldly and asked Ryan, "Since you think so highly of Jessica, why not let your group sponsor her?" As soon as the words fell, Jessica's eyes lit up instantly. Her eyes were full of expectation, as if she had seen a life-saving straw staring at Ryan closely. Ryan, on the other hand, hesitated and looked embarrassed and finally managed to squeeze out a sentence. "I'll go back and discuss it with my family." I sneered in my heart. Ryan was just an illegitimate child of the Tao family who was not valued. What results could he come up with? People like him would always retreat at the critical moment. He just wanted to use Jessica's embarrassment to satisfy his vanity. Looking at Jessica's smug look, as if she could still rely on Ryan's funding, even without me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of inexplicable pity in my heart. However, I didn't care too much about her smug look. I looked past her and into the distance, thinking silently in my heart, how far can Jessica go without our support? I am looking forward to her future. Olivia and I were successfully admitted to the top university, Peking University, while Jessica went to the normal university next door. Although her grades were good enough to get into Peking University, the normal university provided subsidies, cheap food, and accommodation, and promised to give her a certain amount of money every month. Jessica obviously chose the more favorable economic conditions. One day, Olivia and I were walking out of the school gate when we ran into Jessica. She glanced at us with contempt, and the disdain in her eyes was obvious at a glance. Olivia sneered and said, "A kept thing." She said this bluntly, her eyes full of sarcasm. This reminded me of my past life, when Jessica used my feelings as a stepping stone. At that time, I foolishly thought that she would be grateful for everything I gave her. Gradually, some people began to talk about her behind her back, saying that she had hooked up with the young master next door and would never have to worry about the rest of her life. At that time, I went to the cafeteria with her to eat, and some people said to her face that she was a kept woman. Jessica was so angry that her face turned blue, but she did nothing. She turned around fiercely, overturned my plate, and yelled, "Stay away from me in the future." The hot food was spilled on me, and the classmates around me looked at me with sharp eyes. I wanted to find a hole to crawl into, and I felt so ashamed that I couldn't even face myself. At that time, I really regretted not slapping her immediately to let her know what respect is. But now, I am no longer the soft-hearted William. Facing her gaze, I felt no emotion, only a sneer. Jessica seemed to notice my change and raised the corners of her mouth slightly, trying to provoke more reaction from me. However, Olivia stood up and looked Jessica in the eyes. Her tone was calm, but with a firmness that could not be ignored. "You are jealous that I can go to Beijing University, jealous that Lin chose me instead of you, and jealous that it is me standing next to Lin instead of you." With every word she said, her eyes became colder. Jessica took a step back, obviously not expecting Olivia to be so direct. Her pride was gradually broken, and she tried to maintain a calm expression, but she couldn't hide her inner turmoil. "Why should I be jealous of you?" Jessica retorted with gritted teeth. "You do," Olivia replied bluntly. "You're jealous that I can stand next to Lin, while you can only rely on Rhina's help." These few words were like a fatal triple threat, hitting her most painful spot. Jessica's face changed instantly. After all, she couldn't lie and say that she went to normal university because she didn't like Beijing University. She opened her mouth slightly, but finally said, "I don't want to talk to you." Then she turned around and ran away. Olivia retracted her gaze, stood next to me, smiled, and said, "You're not angry, are you?" I shook my head, feeling extremely calm. No, the person chosen this time is clear-headed, unlike last time when she was treated as an ungrateful person by a few gossips from others. I thought that after this blow, Jessica's pride and arrogance would not appear in front of me again, at least temporarily. But I underestimated her tenacity. That day, I was quietly reading in the library when suddenly a familiar figure appeared in front of my desk. Jessica, still with that condescending attitude, had 3 parts of sarcasm, 3 parts of coldness, 3 parts of indifference, and 1 part of charity in her eyes, just like a modern version of a domineering female president. "William, I'm giving you a chance to invest in my new energy company," she said, her confidence almost piercing. "As long as you put in $50 million, I'll give you 0.1% of the original shares." I couldn't help but laugh. It was simply a fantasy. Who would be so arrogant to attract investment? I kicked the table leg, kicked the stool away, stood up, and looked at her coldly. You are too close to me. Jessica was stunned for a moment, then staggered to her feet. She still looked proud, as if everything was under control, but I could see the turmoil in her heart. The students who were reading around us were distracted by our presence and began to notice us. I said loudly, I'm sorry for the harassment from another school. I deliberately emphasized the word harassment and responded to her without any courtesy. Jessica was obviously stunned for a moment, then raised her voice and fought back. Who did you say was harassing you? The students who were reading books immediately became curious and looked at us. Jessica's expression instantly became awkward, and her aura seemed to be completely suppressed by me. Fan, don't go too far. She threatened me in a low voice, her voice full of gritted teeth and anger. I shrugged, not caring about her threats. Her threats are useless. I stood there, looking at her coldly, without any fear. Jessica was furious, but still unwilling to give in, and continued to threaten. William, think about it. If you don't invest in my company when your family goes bankrupt, don't blame me for not giving you a chance. She looked down upon me, as if she were a puppet in her hands. I suddenly understood what she meant. In my previous life, I secretly embezzled funds from my family to support her entrepreneurship and invested the money in her company, which resulted in the company's capital chain being broken and almost bankrupting our family. At that time, her core technology made a breakthrough, which allowed her to obtain new financial support and barely get through the difficult times. But she never took the process seriously and had no gratitude at all. She always regarded me as her benefactor, but I only provided her with financial support. It turned out that she was reborn, but she only remembered the results that were beneficial to her and ignored all the efforts made for her. You don't have company qualifications, you don't have a team, you don't have a business plan, and you don't have an investment income statement. I looked at her with a sneer and unceremoniously listed a series of questions. You come to me for investment when you have nothing. Why? With your face. Her expression changed instantly, and it was obvious that my mocking words had hit a sore spot. She was stunned for a moment and was so angry that she almost gnashed her teeth, but she had no words to say. She knew that she couldn't answer my question at all because she had nothing. She looked at me in frustration, turned around, and ran out of the library, looking so embarrassed. I couldn't help but sneer as I watched her leave. I knew in my heart that she was going to find Ryan. Sure enough, a few days later, I heard that Jessica successfully raised 5 million yuan in investment, and that money was found by Ryan. Ryan successfully injected funds into her new company through his own channels in exchange for 51% of the company's original shares. Suddenly, Jessica became a celebrity in the school. Her entrepreneurial project attracted a lot of attention, but her normal university did not provide any help for her entrepreneurship. She almost never went to class, and the teachers began to criticize her for not doing her job properly. But Jessica responded bluntly. Asked the teacher how many years of salary it would take to equal the 5 million investment I received. The teachers were shocked by her domineering words, and no one dared to control her anymore. Although her entrepreneurial project was very successful in the eyes of outsiders, in fact, she had no real technical accumulation. Her company still needed a lot of resources to support it, especially technological breakthroughs. I understand that her intelligence and talent have not disappeared, but she is no longer the girl who is devoted to academics and strives hard. Now she's more driven by investment and funds rather than relying on technology itself. In my previous life, I used all my family's money to support her entrepreneurship. At that time, I thought she was the smartest girl in the world and that she would change the world. I even used my family's connections to send her to Beijing University to study the best new energy science and engineering. She spent 4 years there, day in and day out, concentrating on researching technology. However, now, she's just a newly enrolled college student. Although she has memories of her previous life, she has left the technological frontier. It is impossible for her to start a business based on those simple technological achievements. In any case, this time, she will face more severe challenges. I saw her start looking for her entrepreneurial partners from her previous life and rebuilding her team. She tried to attract people who had worked with her in the past, but her partners had already left, and only a few people with similar conditions agreed to join. In the past, her mentors rejected her because she had no technical experience. After all, how could those former top technical experts care about a poor student from another school who hadn't even graduated from their own school? I was different. With the help of my family and an initial investment of 30 million, I reached a cooperation with Professor Zhang. Although Professor Zhang focused on new energy, he always wanted to find stronger financial support, so we reached an agreement smoothly. In order to facilitate the cooperation, I also let Olivia join Professor Zhang's team, enter his project in advance, and receive training from undergraduate to master's and doctoral degree. Soon after, Olivia began to share with me some of her seniors' complaints about Jessica. Once, Jessica gave an order. I want all the competitors' information within 3 minutes. Her seniors began to operate the data, but soon found that the data platform required a membership to continue searching. The senior brother reluctantly turned the computer over and showed it to Jessica. When Jessica saw that it required a membership fee of 300,000, her arrogance instantly subsided a little. In her previous life, she had temporary funding support and could get a few lines of free information at will. But this time, she began to experience the feeling of a tight capital chain. Later, Jessica sent a list of several companies to the seniors and asked them to continue looking for new products. However, there was very little information, and one company had not even been established. The senior went to report to Jessica with a feeling of grievance, but she pointed at his nose and scolded him for half an hour. Jessica shouted at the top of her voice, "Those companies are well-known leading companies in the industry. How could there be so little information?" How could the senior brother swallow this breath? He quarreled with Jessica on the spot. "You want me to do so many things for such a small amount of money?" Later, he simply threw away the work in his hands and quit. After returning to the team, the senior brother complained to Olivia and others, complaining about Jessica. She doesn't have a life of a princess, but she has all the bad habits of a princess. She really thinks she is great. She doesn't know anything and still gives orders blindly. The senior brother felt that his summary was so accurate. Speaking of Jessica, she has always been very arrogant. The reason why she was able to go smoothly in her previous life was that I took the resources of the Smith Group and held her like a fragile treasure. She wanted data, and the professional strategy department of the Smith Group had a large professional database, which was freely available to annual members. She wanted plans, and more than a dozen managers under her were responsible for the part they were good at, and they would summarize and organize it and hand it over to her. She wanted a technological breakthrough, and dozens of technical backbones in the laboratory worked overtime day and night, and the patent results obtained were signed. By her, Jessica. It was the efforts of so many people that gradually put the halo on Jessica and made her a so-called technical genius and business upstart. But she really thought that she was radiating light and illuminating others. But at that time, my eyes seemed to be blurred, and I really thought she was a piece of buried gold. Jessica's entrepreneurial team did not last long. After achieving some initial results, the core technicians quietly left. Jessica thought it was theft, but in fact, those people just applied for their own patents. Later, the technician took his technology to a company owned by a rich second generation and earned 10 times the original income. Jessica was naturally furious and ran to the company to make trouble. As a result, the rich second generation pushed her, and she was so angry that she picked up a vase and smashed it. Both of them were sent to the hospital. When I heard the news, I immediately notified Ryan and rushed to the hospital. In my previous life, that rich second generation guy didn't intend to let Jessica go easily, and I had to work hard to save her. This time, I was waiting to see how Ryan would perform in this scene. In the ward, Jessica was lying alone on the bed, with her leg in a plaster cast and hanging high. On the other side, the second generation rich man was sitting in a wheelchair with gauze wrapped around his head and several strong men stood behind him. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it was suffocating. Jessica looked at this scene, and her face turned pale. She knew that she couldn't afford to offend all this. In my previous life, I stopped their farce by myself, but today, I am standing here to watch the fun. When Jessica saw me and Ryan, her expression relaxed a little. Especially when she saw me, she showed a sense of superiority on her face. That expression of, I knew he couldn't let me go, made me want to rush up and slap her twice. The rich second generation noticed Jessica's gaze, turned around, and asked me, "Are you her boyfriend?" I quickly waved my hand and said, "I was just passing by." Jessica's eyes looked like she wanted to eat me. She glared at me fiercely. I turned around and saw Ryan standing next to me. Her expression instantly became more self-righteous. I guess she must think I'm jealous, which is ridiculous. I didn't want to be infected by her inexplicable thoughts, so I quickly stepped back and stayed away from her. As expected, the second-generation rich man turned his eyes to Ryan. Ryan took a step forward, and Jessica's eyes changed instantly when she looked at him. It was so tender, and her eyes seemed to be filled with stars shining. Don't get me wrong, she and I are just ordinary classmates. I think there may be some misunderstandings between you. Let's just make it clear. Ryan walked forward, and at the same time, he stroked his bangs like a little girl. Misunderstanding? I don't have any misunderstanding. You smashed my head, and I'm here to ask you for compensation. The second-generation rich man looked him up and down and sneered. What? You want to help her pay for it? Ryan's eyes flashed, and he looked around, seeming a little uncomfortable in the tense atmosphere. Not really. Ryan rolled his eyes and pretended to be nonchalant. But for my sake, can you ask for less? Sure. The second-generation rich man sneered and touched his chin. I was supposed to negotiate a big deal worth $100 million today, but she smashed my head and I couldn't make the deal. Logically, she should pay for it. Considering your face, I can give her a 10% discount and just pay me $90 million. How about that, brother? Ryan's face turned pale instantly, and his tone was no longer so relaxed. I'm not familiar with this classmate. If you have any problem, just talk to her directly. After that, he didn't even look at Jessica and quickly left the ward. Jessica's eyes dimmed, disappointment and anger intertwined. Obviously, she had realized that no one would support her in this farce. The rich second generation was still cold and ruthless, looking directly at Jessica. If the compensation is not satisfactory to me, I will send you to jail. In the previous life, Jessica was the first to attack. If the rich second generation insisted on not reconciling, she would naturally bear criminal responsibility. I quietly took action and used the most valuable business conditions of the Smith Group to exchange with the rich second generation. Not only did I save Jessica, but I also helped her get back the stolen core technology. This time, Jessica lost her support and had to fight against the rich second generation alone. How could she have the confidence to negotiate with them? She looked at me helplessly, with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. William, as long as you help me solve this problem, I will be your girlfriend. After she said this, she closed her eyes and turned her head to the side, as if this was the biggest concession she could make. In my previous life, I paid a lot for her. This time, I decided to let her see with her own eyes what she had lost. I pretended to be emotional with a hint of urgency in my eyes and asked the rich second generation, "What do you want to do to let her go?" The second generation rich man seemed to recognize me suddenly, with a sly light in his eyes. "Hey, you are the young master of Smith Group. How come I don't recognize you? We are family. There's no need to talk about compensation. If you really want me to let your little lover go, you can exchange it for Smith Group's retail channels." Jessica opened her eyes suddenly. Her eyes were full of shock and enlightenment. She had taken over the Smith Group before and knew the significance of this retail channel, and also knew what I meant. She turned her eyes to me with a complicated expression and seemed to be a little touched. I pretended to be hesitant, but I had already made up my mind. Looking at Jessica's eyes, I smiled and said, "If she is really my little lover, maybe I will consider it. But some people just don't understand their place. I won't be a garbage collector if they are soiled by others." I rolled my eyes and walked out of the ward with a domineering look, feeling refreshed. Jessica was not sent to prison. The rich second generation did not want money, but the project in Jessica's hands. Eventually, Jessica had to hand over the entire entrepreneurial team to the rich second generation and even signed a sell contract to become an employee under the rich second generation. She could only be considered an intern before graduation and received a subsidy of 1,000 yuan per month. After Ryan knew all this, he immediately went to Jessica's house to settle accounts. Ryan's 5 million investment was originally from his rich sister, but now not only did he not see any profit, but he also lost all his principal. The rich sister suspected that he was colluding with a vixen to defraud money and dumped him in a rage. Ryan was so angry that he naturally found Jessica. It is said that the two of them had a lot of arguments. In the end, Jessica compromised and signed him an IOU for 5 million. But she only receives a subsidy of 1,000 yuan per month now, and she is afraid that she will never be able to pay it back in her next life. Ryan has stupidity in my heart, but the smile soon froze. Jessica, that shameless woman, actually set her sights on me. Early in the morning, I left the dormitory to go to class. As soon as I went out, I saw Jessica standing at the door, holding a small transparent plastic bag in her hand. In the bag were 2 ordinary steamed buns bought from the cafeteria. When she saw me, she ran over with a big smile on her face. "William, this is your favorite big steamed bun." Her smile was obviously forced, but she managed to look friendly. I felt so sick that I almost wanted to vomit yesterday's dinner. She also unconsciously noticed my dislike, frowned, and showed her impatience without disguising it. "Didn't you like it before?" she said coldly, with a hint of pride in her tone. I sneered in my heart. That before is not now. In the previous life, she threw her plate at me in the cafeteria, which made me lose face. I endured it for a whole week before I went to see her. As a result, she was very unlucky that week and encountered many people's ridicule. Finally, she couldn't help it and came to me with breakfast. That time, it was 2 steamed buns. Now that I think about it, those 2 hard buns might have been leftovers from her meal the day before. At that time, I foolishly thought that she had prepared breakfast for me personally. So I ate those 2 hard buns and almost choked to death. I really want to go back in time and give myself 2 big slaps. Who likes to eat steamed buns? As I was thinking about this, a warm voice came. Olivia appeared behind me at some point, holding a pink insulated box with freshly warmed milk in it. "I feel a little embarrassed that you don't have to bring me breakfast every day." I smiled and took the milk. Olivia smiled gently, her eyes full of concern. "Skipping breakfast is bad for your stomach," she said, handing me the milk. "Every time I feel uncomfortable in my stomach, she will appear by my side in time." That time when I had a stomachache, she happened to see me accidentally mention, maybe I didn't eat breakfast. Since then, she has prepared breakfast for me every day, rain or shine. Jessica looked at us and turned away angrily. She walked to the trash can and deliberately threw the 2 steamed buns in her hand heavily, making a bang sound. The buns fell to the ground, emitting an unpleasant smell. I curled my lips helplessly, thinking that wasting food is really bad. Olivia walked over gently, picked up the buns, removed the plastic bag, put them aside, and fed them to the stray cats that often came to eat nearby. At that moment, I thought she was more beautiful than ever. However, Jessica did not give up. She always appeared beside me unconsciously, like a fly that could not be driven away. When I was in class, she sat in the front row. Every time I entered the classroom, she would always take a seat early and wave at me across a row of desks. Whenever she did this, I had to hold back my anger and complain to the teacher, saying that she was affecting my studies. In the cafeteria, she tried every way to strike up a conversation with me. Every time we lined up, she would stand in front of me and ask me to stand in front of her. I was in no mood to pay attention to her, so I turned around and went to the cafeteria on the 3rd floor. What's even more annoying is that when I go home on weekends, she is still waiting downstairs and insists on going with me. At that moment, I turned around and got into the luxury car that came to pick me up, no longer paying attention to her existence. Olivia understood my troubles very well and spent more time with me. Even though she had a heavy workload, she still supported me silently. She was never impatient and gentle, which made me somewhat dependent on her. Every night after she sent me back to the dormitory, she would accompany me to feed stray cats. Those kittens were alert and greedy, and they would run over happily when they saw her. I also learned to feed them, and seeing the wet little tongue licking the palm of my hand, it felt warm and soft. At that moment, I was actually a little envious of these cats for being so carefree. Just as I was immersed in this warm moment, suddenly, Jessica's sharp voice broke it all. "What are you doing?" She stood behind us, her face twisted and angry. The kittens were scared and ran away. Jessica's eyes were fixed on me, as if she would rush over and tear me apart in the next second. Olivia stood up and leaned gently against me, and I pulled her behind me without hesitation and looked at Jessica expressionlessly. Jessica coldly, without any fluctuation in my tone. Her anger was instantly suppressed by my indifference, and she seemed to have no idea how to respond. I am. Jessica's voice was hoarse. Her throat seemed to be tightly grasped by an invisible hand, and she couldn't speak clearly. Her expression changed from anger at the beginning to confusion, and then revealed a trace of regret. And in the end, she even revealed a trace of pain. "You are mine." She looked at me with burning eyes, as if I was the most dazzling existence in the world, but I knew in my heart that she was just acting. Even if she was sincere, after what happened in my previous life, I would only feel disgusted and would not trust her at all. I put away all my emotions, turned to look at Olivia, and said, "Go upstairs early." Olivia nodded and responded gently, "Okay, I'll watch you go back first." Her voice was like a soft feather, gently patting my heart. I didn't look back. My steps were firm. Jessica kept shouting behind me, but I didn't stop at all. She was just a mud pit that I had fallen into in my previous life and ended up getting myself and my family covered in mud. This time, I will never let myself make the same mistake again. In the following days, Olivia continued to accompany me as usual. We ate together in the morning, took walks together in the evening, and feeding the cat almost became our regular activities. Her existence was like a ray of sunshine in my life, warm and quiet. However, one day, Olivia did not show up from morning till night. I felt an inexplicable uneasiness in my heart and hurried to ask her senior. The senior also said that he last saw her in the laboratory, and then he never contacted her again. I started using my family connections to investigate and eventually learned that Olivia had left school late last night and had lost contact since then. After further investigation, I found that she was last seen in a dirty alley. That place was actually her home. My heart sank, thinking of her father, a drunkard, and the scars on her face that I saw for the first time. I didn't hesitate and immediately led people over. The place was simple and shabby, and the color of the walls was almost unbearable. A drunken man leaned against the wall with a bottle of wine in his hand. When he saw us come in, he just lazily raised his hand to block the sunlight and continued to drink. I couldn't bear it any longer and asked directly, "Where's Olivia?" The big man still ignored me, so I asked someone next to him to shake him a few times. Finally, he burped and said drunkenly, "She was taken away." "Why are you looking for me?" That little bitch thought I couldn't find her if she didn't come back. But in the end, someone came to her to pay off my debt. The bottle was shaking in his hand, and an idea flashed through my mind, but I didn't have time to catch it. Then, several brothers came up and slapped him twice, and he lowered his head and begged for mercy in pain, and finally spit out the name of the creditor, Robert. I didn't dare to delay and rushed to Robert with my men. Robert saw that we were a large group and agreed to let me bring only one person in to negotiate. I agreed immediately without hesitation. They locked Olivia in an empty room with a table and a stool. She sat quietly on the stool, with two big men standing around her, holding IOUs in their hands and with obvious red marks on their faces. Although she kept her lips tightly shut, she was still trying hard not to collapse. Seeing her tough look, I felt an inexplicable pain in my heart, and I wanted to pay the debt quickly and take her away. Robert waved his hand, and the two big men beside him left. He came over, seemed to be looking at me, and said with a smile, Handsome man, you are in good condition. You must not care about the money. If you can help the girl pay off the debt, we can leave peacefully. How about it? Everyone could talk smoothly. I looked at the amount on the IOU, more than 1.2 million, which was not even within my consideration range, so I agreed without hesitation. However, Olivia's eyes dimmed for a moment. She suddenly struggled violently, with tears in her voice. Give me the IOU. I'll sign it. I'll sign it. Don't look for him. My heart ached, and I felt sad when I saw her helpless look. I just wanted to pay the money and take her away to end it all. However, a younger brother next to Robert suddenly said something, and Robert's eyes suddenly changed. He turned around with a sarcastic smile on his face. It turned out to be William. I'm so sorry, but there is really no way for you to solve this debt of hundreds of thousands. If you tell others, others will look down on you. As soon as he waved his hand, someone immediately handed me a new IOU. The amount suddenly soared to 100 million yuan, with a daily interest rate of 1%. I looked at the number on the IOU and almost exploded with anger. You are simply extorting money. Mr. Lin, sign here so we can talk. Robert sneered and pointed to the signature on the IOU. What a greedy guy. I gritted my teeth secretly, pursed my lips, and said nothing. The atmosphere around me gradually became solemn. Robert's brothers gathered around, and the bodyguards I brought with me were also secretly on guard. Just when the situation was about to explode, there was a burst of hurried footsteps outside the door. The police came. Obviously, I had arranged a backup plan long ago. Robert's side was instantly in a panic, and before I could react, someone suddenly picked up a bench from behind and threw it at me. I subconsciously closed my eyes, preparing for the pain that was coming. However, the pain never came. When I opened my eyes, it was Olivia who stood in front of me regardless of everything and slammed into the bench. I was stunned for a moment, as if my heart had been hit hard. Olivia was pale and in great pain, but she didn't complain. She pushed herself forward and tried her best to protect me. At this moment, I realized how strong and brave she was. Olivia was sent to the hospital. After some investigation, the police found out that Jessica had called Olivia out in the middle of the night. However, Jessica insisted that she was just helping Olivia's father pass on the message and could not be convicted. Jessica left the police station after she finished her statement, but Olivia and I knew that she had something to do with this matter. A few days later, Jessica came to visit Olivia shamelessly. Olivia was half lying on the bed because of a shoulder injury, and I was sitting next to her feeding her bird's nest. Her eyes flickered and she seemed a little embarrassed, but she quickly pursed her lips. Jessica came in and saw the spoon I handed over. She took it in her mouth without any hesitation and drank it slowly. Her eyes seemed to have a kind of forbearing emotion, but I felt a sense of annoyance in my heart. Jessica's eyes suddenly darkened, and a sneer appeared on the corner of her mouth. William, what do you see in her? Is a gambler's daughter really worthy of you treating her like this? Do you like the feeling of holding a poor child in your hands? Jessica's words made me sneer. She said it lightly, but she didn't know that in my previous life, I sacrificed everything for her. She made me betray all my relatives and ruin my life. Now she blames me, which makes me feel ridiculous. But I just smiled coldly and didn't want to argue with her at all. What you said is meaningless. Jessica obviously didn't expect me to react like this. She was stunned for a moment, then glared at me more angrily. William, are you so cruel? We used to be so good, didn't we? Don't treat me like this. Can you go back to the way we were before? There was a glimmer of pleading in her eyes. I smiled, my eyes cold. I don't want it. The voice seemed to echo in the air with unquestionable determination. I could feel her whole body froze. The light in her eyes gradually disappeared, and finally it seemed like she had completely given up. I once lost everything for her, but now I don't care at all. Olivia recovered quickly. On the first day, the doctor approved her discharge. She couldn't wait to return to the lab to continue working. I admired Olivia's tenacity from the bottom of my heart. At the same time, my parents were more grateful to Olivia after learning the truth about Robert's incident. Seeing Olivia appearing at my house frequently, I could only run back and forth between school and home. What should have been a peaceful day was suddenly broken. That day, I happened to notice that my father had a worried look on his face. When I asked him, I learned that something was wrong with the family company. The customers we had been working with for many years were suddenly snatched away by the other party, and the bottom price was almost known by the competitor. Even the retail channels that we have always been proud of have begun to be frequently interfered with by others. What is even more disturbing is that the one who interfered was the rich second generation who had a conflict with Jessica. This group of people is like a time bomb, messing up the entire market. Although it is not serious enough to cause serious damage, these things are indeed troublesome for the company. I understand that behind all this, Jessica is using her memories from her previous life to do bad things, but it is difficult to find direct evidence for such things. So, I decided to start with the New Energy Project. After Jessica's team was taken away by the rich second generation, they kept hitting a wall and making slow progress. After several failures, she suddenly remembered Professor Zhang, with whom she had worked before. She didn't know that Professor Zhang had been telling me about her as a joke in private. Professor Zhang didn't work, so Jessica started to try to contact Olivia's seniors. Olivia once told me that she had felt that one of the seniors seemed to be a little moved, but hadn't taken any real action yet. I decided not to interfere for the time being and let Olivia keep an eye on him quietly. Soon after, the New Energy Project achieved a breakthrough. Professor Zhang and his students applied for a patent in the name of joint research and development. This should have been good news, but Jessica took the opportunity to sue us in court, accusing us of stealing her technology. Her witness was the senior brother she bribed. Not only that, she also took the incident to the internet, trying to use public opinion to attack the reputation of Smith Group. William, as long as you come back to me, I will withdraw the lawsuit. Before the trial, Jessica stared at me arrogantly, as if I could be succumbed to her threats. I couldn't help but sneer, thinking back to my previous life, how I devoted so much to her. But she ruthlessly abandoned me like a piece of trash. Now that I suppress her in every way, she is even more eager to get me back to her. Yuri's still dreaming. I walked past her with contempt, not wanting to argue with her. On the day of the trial, Jessica was arrogant and brought out various data comparisons to try to prove that our research and development content plagiarized her results. However, we had enough evidence. A surveillance video showed that the senior brother secretly copied the core data of the laboratory and gave it to Jessica. What is more powerful is that we provided real data for comparison, revealing that the data she claimed was completely inconsistent with our research. The data she produced was not the real core data at all. In court, our lawyers mentioned that Jessica's instigation of others to steal data was considered unfair competition, and her false accusation of plagiarism constituted a false accusation. She also spread false information on the internet, which seriously damaged the business reputation. Multiple charges were established, and the case was filed. The verdict could not be announced immediately, but Jessica could not escape. After the trial, Jessica asked me to meet her. She wanted to see me for the last time. I agreed, and she waited for me with a little pride. Olivia was also waiting for me, not far away. She knew that I would go to see Jessica. Jessica sneered at Olivia's back, her eyes full of mockery. I didn't expect you to dare to like that poor girl. I knew clearly that she had seen that I was reborn, and there was a complicated light in her eyes. You are ungrateful and repay evil with kindness. This is your real character problem, not your poverty problem. I did not hide my attitude. Do you think I will change my mind about you? There was a hint of hope in her eyes, but I didn't have any emotion. I smiled softly. Have you forgotten the 5 million you owe me? Jessica's face instantly stiffened, and her breathing became unstable. I still looked at her coldly, and I no longer had any sympathy for her in my heart. I'm very happy that you are like this now, I whispered. In the last life, I liked you and made you feel superior to me. You took advantage of me and stepped on my shoulders to get to a place that didn't belong to you. But instead of being grateful, you despised this dirty ladder of mine. I leaned over and said indifferently, if you don't like it, just tell me directly. If you dislike it so much, why do you still enjoy everything I have done for you? I'm not sorry for you. I'm just taking back what I once gave you. Jessica's face gradually turned pale, and she collapsed. She could no longer maintain her former pride, which was the pride I nurtured with countless love and money, but was eventually destroyed by her own hands. I didn't look back, but turned to Olivia, gently put my arm around her shoulders, and looked at her slightly drooping eyelashes. You know what? Even though I come from a poor family, I don't think I'm pathetic. Olivia looked down at me, a gentle smile in her eyes, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know where to start. She suddenly raised her head, with a mischievous gleam in her eyes. She took out her phone from her bag, shook it gently, and showed it to me on the screen. Look, this is my approved patent application, a star patent project. I will use more patents as ladders to get to your side step by step. Looking at her confident smile, I couldn't help but feel a warm current in my heart. At that moment, I knew that no matter how many ups and downs we had gone through, no matter how many people had set traps for us, in the end Olivia and I had come here and were leaning on each other. Without hesitation, I put my arms around her slender waist, hugged her tightly, and lowered my head to kiss her lips. All the ups and downs, all the twists and turns, turned into peace at this moment. I know that the road ahead will no longer be lonely. There was a faint smile on her lips, and her eyes were full of expectation. I believe that as long as the two of us work together, all difficulties will be overcome by us. I just want to walk into the future with her and embrace the happiness that belongs to us.